All right, let's talk about two of the most iconic helmets in military history. Seriously. One has this giant spike, right? And the reason for it is something you'd probably never guess. And the other one, well, it ended up as a cooking pot. Yeah, a cooking pot. These are so much more than just pieces of armor. They're artifacts with these incredible, totally misunderstood stories. And today, we're going to uncover the real truth behind both of them. So really, this boils down to two huge questions. First off, what was the deal with that giant spike? I mean, was it actually for attacking people? And second, how in the world did this other German helmet, a symbol of total war, get turned into a humble kitchen pot? The real answers here tell such a fascinating story about how things like technology, tradition, and just pure raw desperation can completely flip an object's entire purpose on its head. Okay, let's tackle that infamous spiked helmet first. You've seen it everywhere, right? It's one of the most recognizable symbols of 19th century warfare. But here's the thing, that spike wasn't just there to look scary. Nope, it had a surprisingly practical job to do. So its official name is the Pickelhaube. That's pronounced Pickelhaube. It was introduced by the Prussian army way back in the mid-1800s, and yeah, it quickly became this powerful symbol of German military might. But its design, it wasn't really about symbolism at first. It was a direct answer to how battles were actually being fought back then. Okay, so you got to picture what warfare was like in the mid-1800s. This wasn't trench warfare yet. You still had cavalry charges, right? Soldiers on horseback, swinging these massive sabers. Well, that spike, it was actually a piece of defensive technology. It was specifically designed to catch and deflect a downward saber strike aimed right at a soldier's head. I mean, how clever is that? But of course, warfare changes. Fast forward to World War I, and suddenly soldiers are facing machine guns, artillery, trench warfare, and a leather helmet with a metal spike on top was, well, tragically useless. It offered basically zero protection against modern weapons. And yet, it stuck around. And that's when you see this incredible shift happen, right? It goes from being a piece of practical protection to, well, pure decoration. The helmet was totally useless in combat by this point, but it had become such a powerful symbol of military tradition that they just couldn't get rid of it. It really tells you a lot about how institutions can cling to symbols of the past, even when the reality on the ground has completely changed. So, here's the bottom line. That intimidating spike, it wasn't an offensive weapon at all. It wasn't for charging and stabbing the enemy. It was a shield, a defensive tool designed for a kind of combat that was already on its way out. And just like that, mystery number one is solved. All right, now let's jump forward in time for our second helmet. We're going from the Age of Sabers all the way to the aftermath of World War II. And this is where a tool of total war found an entirely new and surprisingly peaceful purpose. Now, to really get what happened next, you have to try and picture the scene in Germany right after the war. I mean, it was bleak. Cities were just gone, devastated. The infrastructure had crumbled, and basic resources were unbelievably scarce. People were just struggling to find food, shelter, the absolute bare minimum to survive day to day. So in the middle of all this devastation, Germany was flooded with one thing: tons and tons of useless military gear, and chief among them was the Stahlhelm, that iconic steel helmet of the German army. So you have people who are desperate for the most basic household items, like pots and pans, and then you have millions of these steel helmets lying around. A brilliantly simple idea took hold. They started taking these now useless helmets and transforming them into simple, functional cooking pots. And listen, this wasn't some grand symbolic act of turning swords into plowshares. No, it was something much more raw, much more immediate than that. It was about survival, plain and simple. It was an act of desperate ingenuity, turning an object of destruction into a tool to, just feed your family. This one small act really reflects the immense challenge that an entire society was facing. How do you even begin to rebuild a normal life from the literal rubble of war? So there you have it. Two helmets, two completely different stories. But when you look at them together, they reveal a really fascinating truth about the objects we create and the lives they lead. So let's break down what we've uncovered. We've seen how the Pickelhaube's defensive spike became this ceremonial relic, a symbol of a time long past. And then we saw how the Stahlhelm, a tool of conquest, was transformed by pure necessity into a simple cooking pot. These aren't just fun trivia facts, right? They're powerful examples of how an object's function and its meaning are never set in stone. They're constantly being reshaped by technology, by tradition, and by the fundamental human need to just survive and rebuild. And all of this leaves us with a final thought. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? 100 years from now, what everyday objects from our own lives will people look back on with a totally new and unexpected purpose? What's going to be their surprising second life? Something to think about.